The music in the ballroom was soft, the kind of polished background noise meant to keep 100 conversations humming. I moved slowly along the aisle of tables, heels clicking against marble, scanning the neat row of name cards until I saw mine. Verona Kingsley. For a moment, I felt relief. My place was here, written in the same elegant script as everyone else's. It was a small comfort, a reminder that, at least on paper, I still belonged. I reached for the chair, intent on claiming the only square of space left for me in a night already designed to erase me. My fingers touched the backrest, and just as I began to lower myself, the chair slid violently out from under me. The floor came up fast, cold and merciless. Gasps erupted, followed by a few muffled laughs. My palms stung against the polished surface as I pushed myself up, dazed but not broken. When I looked up, I saw her, my sister, Sienna, standing with the chair still in her hands, her smile sweet and sharp enough to cut. "The floor suits you better, sis," she whispered, though the venom in her voice carried farther than she intended. 200 guests sat frozen, some turning their faces away, others watching with the kind of uneasy curiosity reserved for car wrecks and scandals. My parents stayed at the head table, motionless, their silence louder than any defense. No one reached for me. No one stood. I rose slowly, brushed off my dress, and adjusted my shoulders. My heart was hammering, but my face stayed calm. I gave her nothing, not tears, not fury, only silence. But inside, a vow burned. Tonight would not end with me on the ground. This was only the beginning. Growing up in the Kingsley house was like standing in two different climates at once. For Sienna, the air was always warm, filled with sunshine, praise, and indulgence. For me, it was colder, quieter, a space where hard work went unnoticed, and sacrifice was treated like background noise. I still remember the Thanksgiving when our father almost lost the house. The foreclosure letters were stacked in the kitchen drawer, hidden under grocery coupons. As if paper could bury panic, I signed a check that covered everything, slipped it under his coffee mug before the family arrived. Later that night, while he carved the turkey, my mother turned the conversation toward Sienna's new boyfriend, a musician with more charm than income. "He has such potential," she said, beaming, as if my silent rescue had been nothing but wallpaper in the room. That was always the rhythm. I kept the books balanced, tuition paid, bills managed, and still my name never left their lips except with a sigh. "Verona is doing fine," they'd say, their voices tinged with pity instead of pride. "Fine, but still single. Fine, but too serious. Fine, but never enough." Sienna, 10 years younger, didn't need to try. She had the kind of smile that made teachers forgive late homework and relatives forget her. Mistakes! By the time she reached high school, my sacrifices had paved her road so smooth she never stumbled. She glided into adulthood with brand deals, photo shoots, and a curated online life that earned applause at every family gathering. "She's a star," my mother would say, her eyes shining. I'd sip water quietly in the corner, invisible in my own story. But the truth was more complicated than applause and envy. Sienna hated being measured against me. Teachers once said, "Your sister excels at math. Why can't you?" Relatives joked, "Verona is the steady one. Sienna is the fun one." What they thought was harmless cut her deeper than they realized. And in her eyes, every time my parents dismissed me for being unmarried, she gained ground. My independence was proof of her superiority. When the wedding invitations went out, Sienna's message to me was laced with honey and warning. "You'll come, of course," she said. "But don't make it one of your boardrooms. No intimidating dresses, okay?" Her laugh was light, but her eyes were sharp. She wanted me there, but muted, ornamental at best, erased at worst. I nodded and said nothing. That had always been my way. Silence as armor, silence as survival. But inside, I felt the tension coil. This wedding wasn't just her celebration. It was the stage she had been building for years, and I knew she intended to use me as part of the backdrop. The closer her day came, the clearer it became. Sienna wasn't just preparing to be a bride. She was preparing to humiliate me, and for the first time, I wondered just how far she would go. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt like living in a house built entirely for Sienna. Every conversation, every errand, every ounce of energy from my parents revolved around her. She was whisked from one bridal appointment to another, their voices always rising with excitement when they talked about lace flown in from Paris or flowers imported from Tuscany. I stopped by my parents' home one afternoon, hoping maybe to feel useful. The dining table was covered in fabric swatches and glossy magazines. My mother leaned over Sienna with an expression I rarely saw directed at me. Pure pride, tender and unguarded. "This ivory shade will make you glow, darling," she said. "Nathan won't even be able to breathe when you walk down the aisle." When she noticed me standing in the doorway, her face changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by something sharper. "Verona," she said, "don't you have work? You're always so busy. Sometimes I wish you'd stop being so practical." The word landed with the weight of a judgment. Practical, not romantic. Useful, not lovable. Sienna caught my eye in the mirror as she adjusted the bodice of her gown. Her lips curled in that smile she had perfected. Sweet enough for an audience, but edged like glass. "Of course you'll come," she said. "But don't overdo it. No need to show up looking like you're about to close $1 billion deal. This is my wedding, not your boardroom." She laughed, as if it were a joke. I forced a smile, but inside, my chest tightened. When the seating chart was unveiled at the rehearsal dinner, I traced the names with a flicker of hope. Maybe this time, I'd be allowed a place near the center. Instead, my name was tucked into a far corner at table 24, next to distant relatives who wouldn't remember me by morning. It wasn't just a seat, it was a message. Stay out of sight. The photographs followed the same pattern. Parents of the bride, the happy couple, siblings. When I stepped forward, the photographer glanced at his list and shook his head. "I don't see you here, ma'am. Maybe in the extended family shot?" Extended family? I stepped back, my hands folded in front of me, while my parents smiled for the camera, as though I didn't exist. Sienna glided past me, radiant in her rehearsal gown, whispering through her painted smile. "Most of the guests don't even know who you are. It's less awkward this way. You don't want people whispering, 'Do you?'" I swallowed the words rising in my throat and said nothing. Silence again. Always silence. But that night, alone in my hotel room, I opened the glossy program left on the desk. Pages of sponsors, bridal party, family acknowledgments, and my name nowhere to be found. For the first time, I admitted what I had long suspected. In Sienna's world, I wasn't a sister. I was an inconvenience. Tomorrow she intended to make that clear, no matter who was watching, and I wasn't sure how much longer my silence could hold. The morning of the wedding rehearsal, Sienna cornered me in her bedroom while she tried on one of her many gowns. She stood before the mirror, her hair falling in perfect waves. Her lips painted a soft blush. For a moment, she looked every bit the glowing bride she wanted the world to see. Then her eyes flicked to mine in the reflection, and the sweetness slipped. "You'll come tomorrow, of course," she said lightly, fluffing the skirt so it shimmered under the light. "But just to show your face. Don't make this about you. Don't intimidate anyone. This isn't your arena." Her tone was honeyed, but every word was a blade. I felt the twist of it deep inside. She didn't just want me small, she wanted me invisible. I stood in the doorway, fingers clenched around the strap of my purse. 100 responses burned in my throat, but I gave her nothing. Only a slight nod. Her smile widened as if she had won some private battle. That evening, when guests gathered for the rehearsal dinner, I tried again to slip into the flow of family chatter, but the seating card reminded me of my place. Far corner, out of sight. When I finally sat down, the laughter from the head table reached me like echoes from another world. I glanced at my sister, radiant beneath the chandeliers, and for the first time I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. She wasn't preparing, simply to celebrate. She was preparing to humiliate. Every detail of this wedding, every gesture, every exclusion, it wasn't careless. It was intentional. She needed me diminished, because my presence, my success, my silence, all of it unsettled her. And as I sat there, pushing food around my plate, I felt the warning behind her smile settle in my chest. Tomorrow, she would not stop at subtle jabs or whispered jokes. Tomorrow, she would strike in front of everyone. I didn't know how, not yet, but I could feel it coming like thunder in the distance. And when it broke, the storm wouldn't just belong to her. The reception hall glittered as if nothing cruel could ever happen beneath its chandeliers. White linen, crystal glassware, and a string quartet humming in the corner painted the picture of elegance. Guests in satin dresses and tailored suits filled the room with polite laughter, the kind of laughter that never expected a storm. I walked slowly along the rows of tables, heels steady, searching for my card. There it was. Verona Kingsley, tucked neatly in front of a single chair at the edge of the hall. My one small square of belonging. I reached for it, grateful at least for a name written in ink. Then, just as I began to lower myself, the chair jerked away. The ground slammed against me, cold marble biting through fabric and bone. For one heartbeat, silence blanketed the hall. Then came the gasps, the nervous chuckles, the quick shift of eyes trying to decide whether to pity me or laugh. Above me, Sienna stood with the chair still in her grip, her smile radiant for the audience, but edged with malice only I could fully read. She leaned just close enough for her words to sting. "The floor suits you better. Sis?" I pressed my palm to the marble and forced myself upright. My knees ached, but I rose slowly, deliberately, adjusting my dress as though nothing had happened. I gave her no tears, no fury, no scene to spin into entertainment, only silence. Around us, the crowd shifted, uncomfortable. My parents sat unmoving at the head table, their expressions carefully blank, their silence louder than applause. No hand reached for me. No voice cut through the cruelty. I straightened my shoulders, brushed off invisible dust, and walked toward the doors. Each step echoed like a gavel in the hall. My sister wanted me shattered. Instead, I left her with frustration curling at the corners of her smile. But as the music and chatter resumed behind me, I knew something had cracked open that could never be closed again. This wasn't just another slight to endure. This was the line I could not let her cross without consequence. I lingered in the corridor, my breath uneven, the hum of the quartet muffled by the heavy doors. My palms still stung from the fall, but what cut deeper was the silence of everyone I had once called family. I thought if I stayed away long enough, the humiliation might fade into shadows. I was wrong. By the time I returned to my table, a cluster of younger guests were already hunched over their phones, giggling behind their hands, eyes darting toward me. My stomach tightened. I slipped my phone from my clutch and opened the app I dreaded. There it was, a 30-second clip of me hitting the marble floor, the caption blazing, "Savage bride prank, 200 guests gasped." The sound of my body striking the ground echoed from the tiny speaker, followed by the cruel smirk on Sienna's face. It had already been viewed thousands of times. For a moment, panic clamped around my chest. My career had been built on control, precision, never faltering under scrutiny. Now my dignity was a hashtag. My first instinct was to call the guest who had posted it, to demand it be removed. But then I read the comments. That poor woman stood up like a queen. The bride is heartless. Who does this to her own sister? She didn't even flinch. That's real strength. The words blurred. Not from shame, but from something unexpected. Recognition. For once, I didn't have to defend myself, explain, or prove. Strangers saw the cruelty for what it was. They saw my silence not as weakness, but as power. I closed my eyes, letting the glow of the screen wash across my hands. Sienna had meant to reduce me, to turn me into a spectacle. Instead, the world was seeing her cruelty and my refusal to break. When I slipped my phone back into my clutch, the fear in my stomach had loosened. Let them share it. Let them watch it 100 times. Each replay revealed her malice and my resolve. The humiliation that was meant to erase me had become the evidence that I would no longer be an invisible. And this time, I wasn't the only one who had noticed. The room was buzzing with laughter and champagne, but I could feel the shift even before it happened. Nathan had stopped playing the part of the groom. His smile was gone, his hand tightening around the microphone as if he were steadying himself against a storm. Only he could see. His eyes found me across the hall, then dropped to the phoenix pendant at my throat, and in that instant, the truth landed between us. He knew. He rose slowly, and the crowd hushed. Guests expected another toast about love and blessings, some charming anecdote meant to flatter the bride. But his voice was different now, low, sharp, deliberate. "Miss Kingsley," he said. His gaze locked on me. "You're the one who saved my company with $25 million. Aren't you?" A ripple of shock cut through the hall. The quartet faltered. Glasses froze halfway to mouths. Every head turned in unison toward my corner. My parents stiffened, their smiles collapsing into confusion. Sienna's hand clenched around her wineglass so hard, I thought it might shatter. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let the silence answer for me. Nathan pressed on. His voice grew stronger, fueled by something rawer than gratitude. "What none of you know is that 2 years ago, my company was weeks from bankruptcy. Investors fled. Competitors circled. And then, an anonymous fund stepped in. Not once, but 3 times. Without it, we wouldn't be here tonight. I wouldn't be here." His hand trembled as he pointed toward me. "It was her, Verona Kingsley." The room gasped again. But this time it wasn't laughter. It was disbelief, admiration, shame. People shifted in their seats, suddenly remembering the woman they had watched hit the marble floor. Sienna tried to laugh, her voice pitched too high. "That's ridiculous. Verona has nothing to do with—" But Nathan cut her off. "You never told me, Sienna. You knew. You let me believe you were the one with resources, with stability. But it was her. And worse, you betrayed me." A murmur swept like wildfire. Nathan's jaw clenched as he turned back to the guest. "She sent confidential files to my competitor. Verona was the one who contained the damage quietly, never asking for recognition." Sienna's face drained of color. My parents leaned forward, whispering frantically, but their voices drowned in the rising noise of the crowd. And then, from the head table, Nathan's mother stood, her voice carried with a weight that silenced the room. "Our family will not be tied to deceit. This wedding is over." The chandeliers glittered above, but all eyes were on me now, not as the sister humiliated, but as the woman who had stood and endured, the one who had held dignity when everyone else let it slip away. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply lifted my chin, steady as stone, and in the silence that followed, I finally felt seen. The room was still heavy with Nathan's mother's words when I rose from my chair. Every eye followed me as I walked toward the head table. My heels struck the marble floor with a steady rhythm, each step louder than the murmurs that had filled the hall only moments before. Sienna sat frozen, her face pale beneath layers of makeup, her hands trembling against the folds of her gown. For once, there was no smirk, no clever whisper, only silence. I stopped before her, my fingers brushing the chain at my neck. Then, I slipped my hand into my clutch and pulled out the Kingsley family ring, a simple gold band, passed through generations, entrusted to me in the end, though Sienna had always assumed it would be hers. I placed it gently on the white linen tablecloth between us. The metal caught the chandelier light, gleaming brighter than any jewel. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. "Honor can't be borrowed. It can't be bought through marriage or stolen through deceit. It's carried in your actions. Tonight, you showed the world you never had it." A murmur rippled through the guests, solemn, almost reverent. Sienna's lips parted, but no sound came. She couldn't reach for the ring. She couldn't even look at me. I straightened my shoulders, turned, and walked away. No applause, no triumph, only the silence of a room that finally saw me clearly. Some guests rose instinctively, not to stop me, but in acknowledgement. At the doors, I paused just long enough to let the weight of the moment settle. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their praise. I carried something stronger than both. My dignity, intact, unshaken. And that was enough.